Thank you, Sarah. So we are now streaming. This will be on YouTube, so people can watch it later. I just caught up on the last education meeting that I missed because I was doing field work. But my name is Ian, and I try to like MC these meetings, interview people, get some good resource connections. And Tamara and I were just speaking about how to get started with some of this. And we mentioned the e-NABLE device catalog, which I'll put the link into the chat again as a great entry point getting through the hub. And also the NIH's 3D print exchange prosthesis section, which we're trying to revamp to be a little more visual and sort the top designs. We were saying one of the big complexities is sort of navigating the open source design world and all of its complexity for an actual occupational therapy use, like a task that a human wants to do with one. And I was recommending that to get started, print a couple, understand how they work, the limitations of the material and the tolerances and what you can fabricate and design before you start working with a human with an actual use case. And then you can be more and more targeted. Tamara was mentioning that oftentimes people who need a prosthesis have a very specific task in mind they want to achieve with it. And so we have Sarah here, our organizer, who makes all of this happen. And my name is Ian. I'm from Brandeis University. I run the maker spaces just outside of Boston. And Tamara is from potentially the furthest west Canadian makerspace that could start making some prostheses for people who need them, which is very exciting. Potentially revamping a chapter, it sounded like.
I don't know what's...
Seeing what's possible.
Yeah, somebody just reached out and said, we need to do something, otherwise this is going to disappear, and is anybody interested? So there could be, other people that are doing their research right now too, trying to figure out.
And Lindsay joins us too. Welcome.
Hey, thanks. So happy to be here.
Are you coming from the makerspace world somewhere?
Yeah, so I actually teach fourth grade math and science. So I do have a 3D printer in our classroom, and we did do some work with other grade levels in our district.
Cool.
And I also am a high school robotics coach in
Very
first.
Cool. Yeah.
And so my students are really interested in, participating a little bit more, perhaps collaborating with some, international affiliates or national affiliates to learn a little bit more about e-NABLE.
Cool. I could, so this is a show and tell session, sort of like updates if people want to talk about projects. I have a little thing to kick us off that I could run through some of what we've been working at in the Brandeis Makerspace over the summer. And then we could connect you to some resources and just have a conversation. Does that sound good? So just recapping where we were. Oh, could I have screen share, Sarah? I think you need to make me a co-host so I could share some pictures.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
All right, so here we go. So I wanted to first share that we're really thinking about assistive devices broadly at e-NABLE, recapping the last education meeting. I know this was a big topic of diversifying beyond upper limb prostheses to all sorts of different assistive devices that this community can help you connect to. And I think upper limb prostheses are a great way in. There's a lot of documentation. There's a lot of physical open source designs that you can download and tweak. But we really want to highlight Makers Making Change as broader than just upper limb prostheses. But upper limb prostheses is a great place to start. And talking about getting started with e-NABLE, I think the hub is the essential resource, the center of the community. And the devices catalog is a great place to start, thinking about what designs and where to go. And if I was going to start today, I would definitely go with something like the Phoenix hand. So on NIH's collection, we've been working to revamp some of the designs in a more graphical space. And there's a bunch of different derivatives of the Phoenix hand. This is a good one to maybe start with, that has some great files and resources, including like a very detailed build guide for how all the pieces go together. And one of the things that makes this possible for me is having access to kits. So I wanted to highlight that you can go on sites like 3D Universe and get all of the screws and rubber bands and string you would need to assemble the parts that you print. which I was saying my first one of these I built in about 2014. I literally cut the cables out of my window blinds, and we don't have to do that anymore. And you also don't have to go to 3 different hardware stores to find all the parts. So that's been very helpful for us, especially building this into more courseworky stuff. So that's sort of a recap of the resources. And I could talk a little bit about like what we've been doing in my space this summer. Does this slideshow show? Is it still like you see a full screen video? Did that work? Okay, cool. So this is where I was for a lot of the summer. This is an archaeology dig that I was supporting the drone work and 3D scanning of through our makerspace. So this is the site. It's in Greece. And this is the Gulf of Corinth, sort of looking south. And it's this big harbor. And we do a lot of research on Bronze Age collapse. And this time we were partnered with Yale University, Professor Andrew Coe from the Peabody Museum at Yale, looking at a new site and how it connects to other sites we've worked with. So we had a team, including a wonderful student, Micah Gold, who helped me produce a lot of the drone content. And so I think my biggest specialty in this space is probably 3D scanning. We also do drones and fabrication, and we support robotics. So we build a lot of our own platforms. And this is just promo reel, but really what we're there for is like to make maps like this, so we can analyze the landscape. So that took me away from making devices. But when I came back a couple weeks ago, we had a new client and did one of our first assistive devices for an animal. We mainly work with people. We do have an e-NABLE chapter that's been active and more active at different times. We made about 12 e-NABLE hands for people that need them. But this was our first open source dog device. So adapting a lot of this public design to fit the scale of the actual animal we were working with, trying a bunch of different versions to try to get something that worked. And this is Zippy. And Zippy is 6 months old and weighs 2.4 pounds and has a genetic disorder that's not uncommon, where Zippy is missing her front legs. And so we printed on a couple different types of printers. Mainly we're using a Prusa Mini and trying to understand how we could fit all that stuff. And so this is our first prototype. And just this week on Wednesday, Zippy took her first steps ever, which was so exciting to see how quickly Zippy could learn on this platform. And we actually used one of the 3D Universe kits for a lot of the assembly parts. So that was handy to have. And it does have these stops on the public design. I think we're going to add training wheels, sort of. So mainly this is so the dog doesn't go over the top, but also going back. So not exactly e-NABLE, but another assistive device. And here is a video of Zippy's first steps. So that was super exciting to see. And our first time working with an animal. And Zippy was a very good client, very easy to work with. So the other big project for us, relating more closely to e-NABLE's central mission, is getting the 3D print exchange on NIH's website to have a better section of content with more e-NABLE designs. And we could always use more help curating this. I really want to use this as an educational resource too, so that as we have groups that want to do this at the university, we can point to a place to find designs quickly and maybe take those kits and adapt them for a bunch of different open source designs. And this relates to a new initiative. My big summer project is to launch an engineering program at Brandeis in collaboration with Professor Ben Rogers in the physics department. We're going to teach an introduction to design methodology class with a focus on design to repair the world. And we do want to use these open source prostheses as one of the options for a capstone project. I think assistive devices broadly, and we'll let the students figure out what that means over the course of the semester, but we'll all have them start with navigating one of these open source designs as something that's public and they can assemble. So we're building a classroom, and literally this was a month ago, this was this week. Like the classroom is coming together as we speak. And my team helps build maker spaces. So we're putting all this equipment in, and we're also redoing a lot of our services. So these are some of our rooms, our machine room, We got a big new machine to go in there, and some of our electronics rooms are getting retooled, and we're refurbishing a bunch of our machines so that we're ready for the semester start with all this new enthusiasm for engineering across the institution. So that's a little of the context of how e-NABLE fits into our stuff at Brandeis. I think we're going to have our chapter get more active this fall. We've sort of petered off a little since the pandemic, and we want to get back to working with actual clients around these hands. So hopefully that helps contextualize a little and give you a couple of resources about where to get started. I think there's really no wrong way in, but it usually starts with understanding of the designs and the materials and how to get good prints, and then start to work with clients around how to solve their problems with those tools. And Lindsay, you said you were going to work with this potentially with a first team or some students that already do some type of fabrication.
That's correct. So we actually, what we did was we printed the Phoenix hands, a few variations of them, and then we mentored a first Lego League team.
Cool.
And and so that was pretty successful. And they got to kind of experience how the parts went together, the different infill settings, all of the logistics about, you know, the complications of the design and putting it together. So what we're looking to do now is to really kind of like build on our skills and with professionals in the field to then, you know, perhaps keep mentoring, maybe do some outreach for clients. We do have an interest in some of the animals prosthetics. We have some animal sanctuaries around us. So I found that information to be really intriguing. Is that file open source?
Yep, I'll
that
put
you
it
use
right
for
in
zipping?
here. Yep, and it's based on a specific use case that was matched to our client, but I'll put the link in there as an instructable file.
Great.
So
Okay, and that's like in the e-NABLE hub.
it is
as
not.
well?
That was so
Oh,
e-NABLE
okay.
mainly focuses on assistive devices for humans, but from
Yeah.
our learning from that, we're thinking about broadly what we can do to help
Yeah, that's
similar problems.
fantastic. Yeah, that's really cool. So did you use like TPU? I'm wondering like how you gauge the infill
Yeah,
settings, like to test it for like
totally.
zippy size and weight and,
Yeah.
you know,
So
durability before trying it
yep.
out.
So I used PETG partially because of the way it fails. I think especially like fitting things to humans, PLA can shatter and be a little brittle, or fitting things to animals, where I don't want it to have a sharp edge ever. And I really like the way PETG fails because it usually bends rather than shattering. So you can get like a crease
it's like
in
has
it,
like
but
more
not
like a rubbery
it's
substance
a little
to
more
it.
ductile, and it can take higher temperatures. So if you leave it in a car, it doesn't start to melt or get gooey like PLA. So I love PLA as a inert prototyping material that's cheap and easy to work with. But once we start fitting things to people, I do prefer PETG. Like during COVID, we made a lot of PPE, and like with the headbands, we wanted to see how they would break, and we prefer to fold to a shatter.
Yeah, that's cool. Have you worked or mentored like high school students, robotics teams? I know that you mentioned something about getting involved with robotics.
Yeah, so we do the battle bots in our team. We do the Norwalk
Nice.
Havoc Robotic League in Connecticut, which is amazing. We do 3-pound mostly. And in that, it's mainly reductive, not additive processes. So we're using like UHMW plastic, like ultra high molecular weight, super tough plastics, where we're CNCing them out of a sheet. But it's still all drawn in tools like Fusion 360 and then fabricated. But again, it's about the fail state. Like, what do we expect the forces to be acting on that? And we do some mentoring, like where we'll do workshops for local high school programs, but we don't really work over and over again or like coach a team like that.
Gotcha. That's cool. And when you say local, is that like, are you based in Connecticut? Is
We're
that
in
where
Boston.
you are?
So we're Boston
Okay.
suburbs, mostly around Waltham area.
That's cool.
But I think we've helped a lot of schools like figure out what equipment to buy and how to set up the settings and get good vendors
Yeah.
for plastic and all that stuff.
Great. That's really helpful.
Yeah, so we're happy to talk about how to optimize, and if you're getting okay prints, how to turn those into awesome high quality prints.
Great.
Do you ever
Cool.
print TPE or TPU onto
We love
PE?
TPU. TPU is awesome material.
Can you print it on top of PETG?
You can get them to fuse together if you get the settings just right, and it helps if you have a dual nozzle machine, particularly something like a Raise 3D where you have dual independent y-axis extruders, where you can really get the offsets and the temperatures just right so they fuse. That some of those Phoenix hands also can use TPU for the connectors for how the finger joints go together.
Okay.
Which is really cool design. And one of them has an amazing guide set. If you want to get started with that, it's the kinetic hand. I'm bad with these names. There, I'll share my screen again. This kinetic hand, files and instructions here. It has the best documentation that I've seen for one of these, this kinetic hand assembly manual. Do I have it here? Or does it link out? Let's see. This assembly manual is extremely detailed, and the joints and the palm, the darker blue, are TPU prints.
Okay. Can you post that link?
Yes, I put it in the chat there,
Okay.
and this is what that link links to. That's the Thingiverse version.
Okay.
An amazing documentation by the team to put that together.
Yeah. Did I hear you mention MMC?
MMC, I'm not,
Okay. I just misheard you then.
oh yeah. But yeah, lots of different ways to use different materials to achieve different performances. We love TPU. It's just you got to get the right machines to have it work. And now there's different types of TPU. So on the more flexible side, it helps to have a direct drive extruder and have that shimmed. It's like pushing rope, have nowhere for the material to go. But they do have firmer TPUs now, particularly like Overture's TPU, which you can get on Amazon, relatively like $20 a spool-ish. That's firmer. So it's not quite as ductile, but it can print through a wider range of machines.
Yeah, I have a direct drive. And most
Nice.
of the printers at the space are direct drive as well.
That definitely helps with material. What type of machines are they?
Most of them are Prusas.
Nice.
One of them is a gantry. We have Rostock, but nobody ever uses them. That's the
Yeah.
Delta.
The big Delta, Rostock Max. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that machine.
Somebody turned one of them. We have two, and somebody turned one of them into a pasta maker.
Super cool.
I've
That
got
sounds like a fun space.
Yeah, it is. Oh,
Does your space have a website you could share?
it's called I think it's VHS dot something.
Cool.
Let's see. It might just come up because I always go there.
And is it a library makerspace, a town makerspace? Is it a private business makerspace?
No, it's called Vancouver Hackspace.
Cool.
But it has nothing to do with computer hacking, of course.
Yeah.
And I'll find it and post it for you. But they have a MMC chapter, which is Makers Making Change. It's a Neil Squire.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And they print devices. And I thought you made a reference to that.
I did actually. I wasn't familiar with the acronym. But yes, we think they're super cool, very impactful stuff.
Yeah, and they've got a chapter within VHS Vancouver Hackspace. So
are they interested in doing more e-NABLE stuff?
This is where I got the
they
on Slack. Somebody
Yep.
posted, we need people. So I don't know what's it's early days.
Yep.
But I had another question. I have a Neptune 3 Pro, which is a lot like the Ender 3 Pro, almost identical actually.
Totally.
How difficult is it to put I don't want the details, but just an idea of how difficult it would be to put a dual nozzle on that.
I don't know about dual nozzle. I've never done a dual nozzle nozzle mod, but I've built more than 20 of these, and I've helped students build over 100 of the Ender 3. we're very familiar with the platform. And to transform it from a Bowden drive to a direct drive is fairly easy. I
Yeah,
haven't seen as many how to do dual extrusion on that. I don't know, but I'm
okay.
sure there's a kit. There's so much aftermarket you can do to those platforms.
Yeah. The raw stock just had like a split Y filament where you could do one or the other, but then you have to, it doesn't work very well.
Yep, totally.
So I didn't want to monopolize time.
Yeah, there's got to be a way to do a dual extruder on that. I'm just not familiar. There's
Well,
a couple good direct drive options.
yeah. You're very fast with the Google searches.
Oh yeah, gotta keep looking through it. I think the printers that I've had the most success with are, originally we did a lot of work with the Creator 3s, the Creator Pros, the FlashForge stuff. That sort of came out of the MakerBot MK2 dual extruders.
Okay.
Those work pretty well and are low cost. And if you go up to the top of the line, I really like the Raise 3D dual extruders. The Idea Maker Slicer is really nice.
Okay. I should be taking notes.
I can put links in for both. Creator Pro. And Lindsay, what type of machines are you using?
Sorry, I'm multitasking today. A little bit of everything, actually. We have some MakerBot 5th gens, which have been around for a very long time.
Yep.
We have some Dremel 3D40s. What else do we have? We have a couple other ones that are like the open frames, and then we have some that are enclosed as well. Yep. Yeah. Is there which do you think that are the best that you have seen, like in terms of quality? Because
Hard to
we do,
say.
like with budgeting, try to
Yeah,
you
totally.
know, yeah.
So I think it changes, and it depends on what materials you want to do and what kind of projects and the scale. I will say that the ones that I've been most impressed with, the uptime, are especially like the new Prusa Minis. When we visit spaces that have them, they're usually running, which is a good bar.
Yeah.
We're excited about stuff like the new Bamboo machines. We don't know exactly
Actually,
where they're headed.
we just were looking into the Bamboo machines, and we put in a wish list for our Board of Education approval for some money. And yeah, no, my students were super like they did like a lot of research on the Bamboo, and it looks like pretty top notch. And just in terms of print times and the types of materials that it's able to print. And then also too, it had that really cool technology where we could leave it running at school and monitor it through the app, which was great because that can save a lot of filament if a print is failing and we're not there, So
we'll see if they stand the test of time. I've seen some spaces, we haven't bought one yet, but we've kicked the tires on a few. And I'm not sure how the maintenance works and longevity, but the print quality seems good and fast. I
cool.
really like the Prusa stuff because it's so well researched and like so many generations to get there. And I really like the Prusa Slicer, which Bamboo has now forked for their slicer. Really nice software. I really like the Ender 3 because they're very low cost, and I like a manual machine that I can tinker with. So from an accessibility standpoint, like I want to spend the budget on as much throughput as I can get. And you can get them for under $200. But if you have the budget, I've been having great print results with the Raise 3D products, but they're like 10 times as expensive.
Right. Yeah, we have a few Dremels, but in terms of running into issues with the extruder, we're seeing how like extensive it is to have to get to the nozzle, and the hose. There's so many little tiny screws that are and it's just really, it was just a really big project, just to try to get to, so, but yeah, with I don't really have too much experience with the Prusas, but they're easier to access because it's an open frame, right? It's not enclosed.
It's an open frame, and you can get an enclosure for it. And they are a little difficult to repair, but we see them standing up longer, like they're harder to break. And we sort of, in our environment, have two different use cases. They're like public printers that are basically 24/7 accessible for anyone to walk up and use. And those we care a lot about uptime and like how hard it is to repair it when they break. For that, I do like something like an Ender where the whole gantry is 18, the whole extruder nozzle is like $18 to replace everything on the carriage. So that's nice. Like you don't need to spend a lot of time and effort. But then something like a Prusa that's probably higher print quality is a little harder to disassemble and repair if it does go catastrophically bad. So I do think it depends on where it is, how many people are using it, and what it's being used for.
Yeah.
When I just got mine, and the thing that I was looking for was automatic bed leveling and removable hot end, where you could just pluck it off the x-axis.
And your Ender clone does that. Your Nero something?
Neptune,
yeah.
it's by Elegoo, the electrical people. Yeah, that and the filament detector. And I'm hoping they come up with a spaghetti detector.
Yep. Yeah, Bamboo does have some of that image recognition stuff, which sounds really cool. And it looks like Creately is making a competitor now. We'll see in a couple generations how well they fare. That's like a machine that I'd love to try one out, but I don't know if I'd go buy a fleet of them right away until they've been tested a little further. The runout sensor is awesome. The Prusa Minis you can get with a runout sensor too. And I really like the way that they do the bed leveling on the new generation of Prusas, where it does like a mesh to get the irregularity. And then separately you do a Z offset with a live leveling where it's printing and moving while you dial it in for the gap. So getting the plane is one step, and then getting the offset from the nozzle to the plane is a second step. But I also just really like an Ender with a manual, get a Post-it note and check all the corners. You have good success with that. Yeah, I'm looking at the Neptune now. Very cool.
Yeah, and it's a good price too. It's relatively inexpensive, and it's because I initially bought the Ender 3 Pro.
Yep.
And the quality just wasn't there, and it failed in all sorts of bizarre ways. Like it would smash itself into the side of the, the struts, and it just did a lot of bizarre things. So I ended up sending it back, and I did my research, and afterwards, because everybody said, buy an Ender, great. And they are great machines. I don't mean to trash them, but I think the quality of control. Yeah.
No, this is cool. You've got the upgraded motor drivers, so it's probably a lot quieter too.
Still quiet, yeah. The only thing is the fans aren't silent fans, so
you hear the fan noise.
Yeah,
that's a good machine though, and the fans are the loudest part.
Yeah, and you can just swap those, buy nice fans and put them in there.
Yep.
Yeah, we have all the Prusas are knockoffs at the Hackspace, and there's one that they call Silent Bob, who's a joy to work with because he's he, like, as a person, he's had his stepper motors and fans upgraded, and he's so quiet.
No, I think that matters a lot, like your local culture. Do you just want the objects off the printer, or do people want to understand how printers work and get under the hood to repair them?
Yeah.
Lindsay, sorry, were you going to say something?
No, I just thought that it was funny that you named your printer Silent Bob. It's funny how attached we become to these machines sometimes. It's like, yeah, I can empathize with that.
Oh, and the whole Hackspace, all the men and the women and everybody in there is like, oh my God, what are you going to do to Silent Bob? Like, don't.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember like just really getting into 3D printing, and like even with just like repairing like an extruder for the first time and then watching it try to print something is like you're so invested, like it's like a baby taking its first steps, like
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I love that moment when they come alive, when you like we've been working on it, you plug it in and press a button and it starts moving.
Yeah. Do you have like so you're kind of getting into this, like you're spanning into like the animal prosthetics. I'm curious if you have any other types of like I know that there's a lot of different initiatives out there, like water filtration systems, which I think
Yeah,
is
yeah.
interesting, but in terms of like doing that with plastic filament is like,
Mhm.
I mean, unless it's just made for like for prototyping, or I guess so. I'm just curious if you have like other areas of interest that you're
Totally.
expanding into.
Lots. So we're across the disciplines. We do everything from like material culture and like ancient objects through like current startups that want to make parts. And we support science lab, bench research, accessories as well. So I think our biggest things are like prototypes for research, prototypes for startups, prototypes for the humanities to help gather better data. But that has gotten us into stuff like citizen science. Like we want to do environmental monitoring or like accessories to help teams that do that. And John Scholl, one of the co-founders of e-NABLE, has moved on to a new nonprofit called the Eco Restoration Alliance. And they're super into urban farms and like converting non-arable spaces into places that produce plants and then remediating soil and air and everything through that process. So I think the imagination of the e-NABLE community stretches far beyond just assistive devices into those other, like, what are the big problems of our time that once you learn this core competency, you can help unlock. And a lot of that does head towards environmental issues and a refugee crisis, like human rights and helping people across the globe issues. I'll put a link for the Eco Restoration Alliance in.
That's really cool. I didn't realize that he branched out to that. That's amazing. Yeah. Just hearing him talk several times, it sounds just like right up his alley.
Totally. Sarah, do you know the link for the correct link for the Eco Restoration Alliance? I'm looking for one to share.
Let me try to pull something up.
So that's also like, we're thinking a lot about this, about like, now that we have some competency in these tools, it's all about sort of the value proposition for our students. Why would they want to spend time on different things? And the upper limb prostheses is a great, I view it also as like, it's an entry point. It's a good place to learn this with something practical that then you can apply to all sorts of different needs. And partially that's the e-NABLE community has built so much documentation and open source resources that you're not designing in a vacuum. You can look at things hundreds of other people have designed to adapt.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I thought that it was really intriguing how you took that drone footage and then put it into a certain software that almost looked like was that like a CAD type of design?
Almost.
Like,
so we're using, so there's lots, we support all sorts of 3D scanning, from like really expensive stuff to very accessible stuff. And what I was showing there was all photogrammetry. So taking 2D photos as inputs, taking hundreds of photos in a pattern around an object or a landscape, and then putting that into software that essentially does like an Instagram filter to turn it into line drawings. And then there's trigonometry as the lines move to turn 2D photos into 3D shapes. And what's great about teaching this to students is now we all have great cameras or access to great cameras. A lot of people just have them on their phone. And those are more than good enough to take great photos you can render. And there's sort of three great softwares today. I would say Agisoft Metashape is like the #1 for education. It's medium price software, but there's free demo, so you can get started for free.
sorry, that's the type of software where you take like hundreds, thousands of pictures that renders it then into the three-dimensional image?
Exactly.
Can you?
Yeah, I'll put a link.
Sorry.
Here's
Thanks so much
for that. This is
I
sort of the gold
appreciate that.
standard for education today. It's like if you're building VR, you probably use Unity in higher ed. I would use that as an analogy for this is the 3D scanning tool like that. There's a lot of coursework developed and research around it. It works on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux, and you can get a free demo mode. So you can try it out and learn it, and then you have to pay to export and get licenses once you're there. Oh, there's the Eco Restoration Alliance, the link from Sarah. So Metashape is a great entry point, but also capturing reality. If you have access to NVIDIA GPUs at your institution, capturing reality was acquired by Epic Games and is now free for education. And like 2 years ago, it was like $5,000 per seat. So they'll give you a free set of licenses for your classroom if you have NVIDIA GPUs that can run it, which is a great tool. And it does the same thing, 2D photos into 3D shapes. And if you want to learn this technique, the documentation is good for both. But I can also give another photogrammetry learning. And like YouTube has so much now. So when I learned this, this is the site that I started with, Cultural Heritage Imaging. And they have a great overview of the process and some good visuals for the classroom. I know there's lots of teams at e-NABLE experimenting with ways that 3D scanning can help create easier ways to adapt these designs to the eventual client. So like scanning human parts and getting better measurements. We always say measurement is the enemy of precision, because the more you measure, the more you introduce error. And if we can get a scan of the shape, we're going to have much better results in the end. I don't think the scanners on phones are quite there yet. Like the time of flight LiDAR sensor on iPhones and some Androids now. It feels like we'll be there soon, maybe in 5 years, but I don't know if you can get a beautiful scan of a hand. Now, Dr. Rick may disagree. One of the people who's often here for the new member meetup, he's gotten some good results with it, but I think it takes some practice and some skill with the software. Photogrammetry, you can pretty rapidly get impressive results.
When is the new members meeting?
This is the new members meeting. Sometimes they're different. Sometimes we combine them. In the summer, partially because it's so much education focused. I was just talking with Sarah, there's often a lot less participation in the summer. And then once the school year starts, a lot more people come. I think everyone's taking vacation, is doing research, sort of is all spread out.
Yeah, a while ago, we decided to combine the education and new members meetup. So this is both of them happening at the same time. Yeah.
I think we would do that until there are too many people, until we have like more than 20 people show up, and then we really have separate conversations going.
Yeah.
I think all of us on the education side were new members at some point, and so the onboarding is something that we've all gone through.
Yeah, and if you have any questions for me, if I don't know the answer, I probably know someone who might. So I'm just gonna drop my email here again. And you can always reach out or send me a message on the hub. And I'll be here.
And Lindsay, something you might be interested in. There's another group working on creating curriculum that meets state standards, to like something that classrooms could pick up and integrate.
That's really cool. Yeah. I actually, what drove me to really become involved with e-NABLE was, I was integrating curriculum along with prosthetic hand creation with teachers in my district as a makerspace initiative. So that is something that really interests me because, I probably speak from a biased point of view because I love 3D printing so much, but I just see so many educational opportunities in there. Forget about it with math. Like there is just so many different relevant points that really are very abstract to students, even in 4th grade. But when we create something, digitally and then see how it translates, when it's actually printed, and then test the designs to see like student interest and all the connections that they can make, and even the connections across concepts in math and how they correlate together is just like takes away the whole, why are we doing this again? Like it's just they're excited, so
I think robotics does that too. The robotics things where the students don't even notice they're learning because they're just trying to make it work.
I know. Yeah, I know. It's so true. And that, is a really awesome club that we have. And, getting those types of opportunities for kids in mainstream classrooms, like, is something that I'm really passionate about because
Yeah.
it's pretty wholesome and great. So yeah, I would love to connect with anybody who's has the same interest.
So definitely come to the next education meeting, maybe the next two, because we'll have more and more people here. And I put the email in for Brent, who is
Okay,
spearheading the effort to develop some curriculum. They're seeking some grant funding to help pay educators to build some of that. It's Brent's
very
idea.
cool.
And it might be worth
Okay.
just emailing him and saying, hey, we heard about your initiative in the meeting. Could we get a quick Zoom? I bet you would have ideas together.
Yeah, I actually have curriculum that I created too, which I is like perfectly imperfect, you know. And
Yep.
I really just love feedback. And so I would love to collaborate for sure. So
So
I'll
he's
definitely send
one
him an
place.
email.
Another to connect you to is Sage Prosthetics, which is just amazing. Uh, this is probably the best documented classroom project that I've seen in this.
Oh,
Uh,
great. Very cool.
and this also came out of people very active in the e-NABLE community. And I'm sure you could reach out and get a meeting with everyone and they'd be excited to talk to you.
Very cool. Thank you for all of these resources.
I think these meetings are efficient because we can figure out what people need to get to the next level. And it's always different.
Totally. Yeah, and it's also just inspiring to see what others are doing and what opportunities are out there in different avenues.
Ian, could you share a link to Zippy's first steps?
The video, yeah.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
Yeah, the owner of Zippy is very happy to share this.
Okay, great.
And we want to, so this is our very first prototype. We're going to get it better and better. And by the time it's on V2 or 3, we want to like get a news article. There it is. Zippy's also the best. I've never heard Zippy bark. She's
Oh.
like the best client.
Thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful.
And that's the thing that we would have never gotten into without our work with e-NABLE over the years. Totally a different way in. So tomorrow we're just about at time. I'm happy to talk more. I'll put my email address in here.
I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever do anything with resin printers?
Yeah, actually we do. So we got the Form 1s, we have some Form 2s, and we're about to set up a Form 3. So we're getting more into it. Mainly we end up partnering with research labs where we set it up like on a bench where it's got more like ventilation and like a sink, stuff like that we don't always have in our spaces. But we get very good results, but we've only had a handful of them. And we just got the 3 so that we can explore more about the diversity of materials. It does seem like the cartridge base sounds awesome, and there's so much more. We haven't set it up yet. We work with a couple local maker spaces that have had better results with that system. So we're excited to see what we can do with it.
What are you hoping you can print with it?
So for us, it's mainly in the researchers so we keep going up and up with scale in our central space. And then we have clients come up and be like, we need little channels to put wires through that are like 20 microns. We're like, well, we don't have that tolerance. So that's our killer use case, is getting smaller things. But I'm also interested in, there's so many resins available now, from biocompatible to flexible resins to like high temperature, high performance stuff. So I think for us, like, we're a PLA shop mostly. And then we figure out how to get, once we get the design right, how to make it in a better material. And so this would be a way to do like sort of fabrication services with better materials. I don't know if we'd have like a public facing come use the form workshop to begin.
Thank you.
I think the Form 3 is the one I'm most excited about, but I know there are super low cost open source ones like the Anycubic stuff that we've experimented with a bit. But again, we're worried about spills and we want to have a little more PPE protection around that stuff.
Yeah, the Hackspace has got a couple. but they're mostly used for like little models of soldiers or tanks or
Yeah, like
or
a
cosplay
Warhammer
stuff.
figures. Yeah, cosplay stuff. That's cool. Would you know which models you're using?
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well, I'm going to check out your website. It sounds like an awesome space.
I think the wiki page on that is accessible to the public, and it under equipment or something.
Yep.
It has all the equipment that we have.
Very cool.
And the resin printer, somebody just updated the information on that, so that'll have that information.
We often reach out to our local maker spaces for specialized stuff we don't have. Like I see you have a vacuum former. We've had to go find one somewhere else before. Really cool
What do you
stuff.
use that for?
So the project for that was we get asked all sorts of weird things. We had an artist in residence at the art museum at our university who wanted to make one of the busts in the library out of mycelium. He said, we don't know
Okay.
much about growing mushrooms, but we can help with the form. So we got access to a bust that was old enough that no one felt like they owned the intellectual property to it. We scanned it, and then printed a positive, and then we took that positive to a local maker space to form a negative to make a
Right.
mold to grow the mycelium in.
Okay. Fun.
Super fun. And one that like, yes, we definitely want to support this. We're not quite sure if we have all the equipment, or like, we don't know much about mushrooms, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice.
I think we're also interested in some of the combat robotics, making like parts of the chassis out of vacuum form. Sort of like RC cars, how they have the top part,
Oh yeah.
stuff like that. And I'd love to get into more like food, like making chocolate molds and things like that.
Well, they're thinking of converting the pasta maker into
Yeah.
a chocolate maker.
That's super cool. Well,
But it's
keep
a
coming,
huge-
and I'd love to hear and see pictures of where that goes.
Yeah. So far, it's just sitting there on the floor waiting for somebody to get inspired to do it.
Yep. Well, good luck with everything. We're just about at the top of the hour. We'll be
Okay.
back in another month, and hopefully there'll be some more folks. And I hope you can assemble your first hand and learn a bit and start finding some clients.
Okay.
Yeah, and feel free to join us next Friday at 11 at the special town hall.
I tried
presentation
to, I
for
clicked
food.
on the link, but it wasn't working for me.
Oh, well, if you send me your email address, I can send you the town hall meeting links directly.
Okay. That'd be great.
You can just email me, or yeah, because my email is in the chat. But thank you so much.
Thank you guys. You're doing
Very nice to
lovely
meet
work.
you today.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Good luck with everything. Thank you, Sarah, for leading us.
Of course. Thank you.
We'll see you in
Bye-bye.
a bit. Bye.